Force limit is a mechanic that exists to represent your nation's capabilities of fielding an army. This mechanic is actually the reason why you can technically never have enough income in EU4. You can always go further over force limit, meaning you can have more troops in the field that help you conquer faster or put down revolts. But in essence, force limit exists to ensure that we have a soft cap on the size of armies. Well, I got rid of it, replacing it by instead just increasing the base costs of troops, and I will be running the next instance of the Lemon MP, which started as the Anarchy Lobby, with unlimited force limit, in all of its glory, for everyone to enjoy. Let's see what the MP enjoyers can do in a lobby where force limit is not the issue. Right then, in this video we'll be going through the main changes of the mod, because there's a lot, after which we'll quickly go over the logistics of the upcoming MP campaign, including sign-up times and everything else you need to know. This video has gone out early to channel members, as indeed we do have limited slots, as Paradox isn't the most stable with lobbies over 60 to 70 members. Anyway, enough self-shilling the membership perks, which by the way do include other cool stuff. Let's get into the actual mod itself. So here we are currently on checksum B823. This is probably subject to change, as I'm assuming people will find more stuff wrong with it that I need to fix last second. That's just kind of how everything works. And indeed I've been using England to test it, which is why there's a continue game on England for it. With that said though, let's get into the game. And here we are on England, and immediately before we really look at more things, I have to say that one of the big issues I've actually had to deal with is that of course starting army size is proportional to the nation's force limit. So what I did is I left the base development force limit and the base amount of force limit everyone just gets. And what I've then done is for player nations, I have a triggered modifier here. And this is set to activate. It doesn't say here, but it says to activate only from the 11th of November. So it's immediately active from day one. You can immediately use this as the player to build a force limit, in which case would be 1 billion troops, I believe. Yeah, it's 1 million, so yeah, it would be 1 billion troops. You're not getting there. But it also means because it's technically not active on day 0, your starting armies are not affected by it, including the AIs. Now for the AIs, we need to go into Observer for this, and I'm just going to go on France here as a demonstration, but obviously France will also be a player. They have a different modifier, so I think the AI will really struggle with basically having these massively increased troop prices. So they have their baseline maintenance reduced by 50%, but also have their force limit halved, and they also just have this all the time. It does mean that they start over force limit, which is why they're actually losing money, but I find they just delete their troops and then they're good. In fact, once they delete their troops and go below force limit, they have a smaller army, but at least they actually field the army and build the force limit because their troops are so much cheaper. So that's nice to see for everyone involved. It also kind of semi-equalizes it from the player point of view as well, because obviously the players are going to have a hard time with unlimited force limit with the massive increases to the base cost of the troops. Now then, let's get back on England and go through the changes, as it were. So I've already mentioned how we've, made everything much more expensive, and indeed, well, I'm going to start by grabbing the next Miltex, well, the next few Miltex, specifically looking for Miltex 7 so that we can unlock cannons, to demonstrate that indeed base prices for everything have gone up quite a bit. Infantry is now 20 instead of 10, which includes maintenance, so now each unit of infantry sets you back half a ducat a month. Cavalry sets you back 1.43 ducats a month and costs 60, and artillery is 2 ducats each in terms of its maintenance, so it's very expensive. Maybe do use your heavy ships for naval blockades, because they're actually not that bad relatively. So yeah, ships are quite cheap now, simply because of these base changes, but indeed, of course, force limit is through the roof, so you can build as many troops as you want. The main issue is the manpower and the money. Now, one of the other buffs I've done for cavalry is I've also given them 20% breakthrough, and that's because I kind of want to use cavalry breakthrough. Like, you very rarely see cavalry, and especially in this kind of version where you're nerfing its costs and making it a lot more expensive, you're going to see even less cavalry because it's even more expensive, so it'd be disproportionately less useful to have. But later on, I want to make it more viable, so it's 20% breakthrough. And the way that works is that if a cavalry unit defeats an infantry or another cavalry in the front row, instead of that front row infantry being replaced by another infantry or another cavalry, it drags a cannon from the back row into the front row, leading to that cannon dying very quickly. So it's a way of specifically targeting enemy cannons, and in this mod where they're 3 times as expensive, that's going to be quite powerful and will force anyone going up against a cavalry build to have to bring a lot more cavalry to the fight. It also makes cavalry a bit more viable late game, despite the fact they have very expensive existence. I don't think it's going to be worth it early on anyway, because being this expensive means that, especially when you don't have cannons, not going to be worth it. It might be just an idea to delete your cavalry day 1. Here's a little bit of a lemon hint for you. But yeah, that's that. Right, so infantry twice expensive, cavalry twice expensive, artillery 3 times as expensive. Next change, though, is going to have to be about grain. Do you need to find a grain province? Perfect, here it is on Sussex. The trading and bonus for grain is changed. It now provides 20% not force limit but manpower, and the base bonus from grain is plus 250 manpower, which to be clear is the same as 2 dev clicks of, well, manpower. So basically every grain province is plus 2 manpower dev clicks. That's the change for grain because it used to give force limits, which would have been a useless modifier, so there we go. It does also mean that countries like Ming, that started with a much larger army because they had more base force limit, have less starting force limit because the grain doesn't give them force limit now, if that makes sense. The other big change, of course, is regimental camps. Now, as part of the issue of this force limit is, of course, if I give everyone all this force limit, they're going to have infinite army generals because you gain 1 general for every 80 force limit, so I've removed that. And instead, one of your other methods of gaining generals is going to be regimental camps, which not only give you 0.1 leaders without upkeep for each one, so if you build 10, you get a free leader. Quite an expensive way of getting it, but it's an option. Should also make leaders more important to get as a modifier. With conscription centers, this is of course doubled. But regimental set camps as well provide 0.5% movement speed each. So if you build 100 conscription centers, it's going to be quite a project, but 100% movement speed. You also get some national spider modifier. 2.5% isn't much, but you know what? If you build like 20 of these, it does add up. And it can be a viable way of basically boosting your national spider, but as well, it also decreases the local recruitment cost. So if you build a regimental camp, you can then build troops on the province cheaply, so at least the upfront cost of building a unit isn't as crippling if you're building it on regimental camps. So that's their purpose now, is basically your actual conscription recruitment centers. If you build a lot of conscription centers, it's going to be an upfront cost, but it'll save you a lot of money on building bigger armies. And at some point, because the 75% recruitment local regiment cost is so massive, it doesn't make any economic sense to not build a conscription center if you're building like a 30k stack. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. And yeah, of course, death wars are going to be a lot harder to do early on now as well, because financially they're going to be much more difficult to support. Expect a lot more bankruptcies. Right, now here's the big one. All national ideas that gave percentage force limit now give percentage manpower, and all idea groups and policies that gave percentage force limit also give percentage manpower now, and one big Control-C, Control-V replace function. It wasn't now, I ran a script for it, don't worry. But that was basically it. So if we take a look at something that would be like quantity ideas that had 33% force manpower, it finished on force limit, now gives 33% manpower. Offensive ideas used to have plus 15% force limit, now has an extra 15% manpower, and so on and so forth. So that's all been changed and replaced, including on the policies. So, for example, quantity economic had a 10% force limit policy. If you take a look now at the quantity, I'm just going to select it and then hover over economic, so it highlights it in yellow for you. Right at the bottom there, well, I mean, we can just look at it this way. There we go, that's probably easier. As you can see, this now also gives you national manpower modifier as well again. So that's there and is an option. So none of the things have gone to waste. It also does mean that a lot of other countries that have force limit in their ideas suddenly are going to have a lot more manpower running around. The Ottomans, for example, now not only get the 20% manpower recovery speed, but they also finish with 25% national manpower as well. So yeah, big Ottos. That's going to be fun. Otherwise, yeah, there's been a lot of other small cleanups and buffs and changes. For example, the career outward focuses had to be reworked. That was a fun one, causing me to be a bit concerned over where that was stored. It was stored in the very weird place in the files, but a bit of a weird complaint, don't worry about it. That stuff is all fixed now. That gives you negative manpower as well. Marches and personal unions no longer give you percentages to force limit and all that kind of stuff. That's all been changed. Another big one is, of course, the Army Organizer Advisor that used to give you 10% force limit and had an event for force limit. Now gives you manpower and accepted culture group, as well as on the event and on the baseline. So that's another thing to bear in mind. A lot of other small stuff like that has been fixed and changed now. So yeah, all force limit modifiers have now been replaced with manpower for the most part. I am probably going to miss some. If you do find something like that, I mean, give me a ping. I'll hopefully be able to fix it, and if it's like some random OPM AI that's going to get the modifier, then whatever, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, that's kind of the TLDR of the mod changes. Let's now talk about the actual MP event, as it were. So we'll begin first session on the Saturday, the 15th of February, and we're playing every week afterwards. Then we'll play on the 22nd of February, and so on and so forth, until the campaign is concluded. This should give everyone plenty of time to do their early pre-game diplo and sign up, and we'll get all the priority seeding sorted and gotten out of the way and all of that stuff. We'll be playing at 7 PM GMT, which is the same time as the Anarchy game previously, lasting for 4 hours as before, which means that if you do want to catch the streams, then that will be the time for you to look forward to. All sign-ups will be done on my Discord, as always. There will be a link to that in the description as well. So yeah, everything and all other information about the mod, about wherever to find everything, will be on there. So go there and find it, for lack of a better word. I will be linking the mod down below in the description as well for those just interested who want to mess around with it yourself. It does still fully work in single player, just bear in mind that of course I'm only giving you the maximum percentage of force limit, because if I give it to the AI, it's going to be very broken. The AI really doesn't know how to behave with infinite force limit. I actually tried to make a video on that earlier and basically crashed because the AI does not handle unlimited force limit well, like at all. So yeah, that's a little bit of a spoiler about that whole video attempt, for lack of a better word. With that said, though, that is kind of all I have time for today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to my channel members, especially Ark, Solar, Solemon, W Haste, Sebastian Haller, Chondog 2.0, Nick Huss, Doug Fortuna, Big Salad, Neb Josh, Gay Fug, Clockwork Norse, Golden Arrows, Nan Hatan, The Awesome Rabbit, Best Pro Gaming, Gradable Flavian, Kono, and Andre Salberg.